My name is Seth Morrison, and I'm 54 years old. For 30 years, I raised my son Marcus as a single father, working 2 jobs, and sacrificing everything to give him the life he deserved. I thought our bond was unbreakable until his wedding day, when his bride publicly humiliated me and ordered me to leave like I was nothing more than an unwanted guest. What she didn't know was that I had paid for every single detail of their dream wedding. Before I tell you how one phone call changed everything, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Please hit that like button and subscribe if you've ever felt unappreciated by family. Trust me, you'll want to see how this wedding went from fairy tale to complete disaster in just 60 seconds. Let me take you back to where this all began. When Marcus was 8 years old, his mother and I divorced. It wasn't pretty, and when the dust settled, she moved across the country, leaving me to raise our son alone. I remember that first night after she left, finding Marcus crying in his room, asking why Mommy didn't want to stay with us anymore. I held him tight and promised him something that night. I told him I would be both his mother and father and that he would never want for anything. And I kept that promise. I worked as a mechanical engineer during the day at a manufacturing plant in Phoenix, but that wasn't enough to cover everything Marcus needed. So I took a second job driving delivery trucks 3 nights a week. I'd come home exhausted, but Marcus would be waiting at the kitchen table with his homework, and we'd work through math problems together until late into the night. Those were tough years, but they were also beautiful. I taught Marcus how to throw a curveball in our tiny backyard. I never missed a single one of his Little League games, even if it meant rushing straight from the factory with grease still under my fingernails. When he was 12, Marcus looked at me after hitting his first home run and said, "Dad, you're my hero." Those words kept me going through every sleepless night and every aching muscle. I turned down 3 different opportunities to remarry good women because I wanted to focus completely on Marcus. My friends thought I was crazy, but I believed that Marcus deserved my full attention during those crucial growing years. We had our traditions. Every Saturday morning, we'd drive out to Lake Pleasant and spend the day fishing. Marcus would tell me about school, about girls he liked, about his dreams for the future. Those conversations in the boat were sacred to me. When Marcus graduated high school as valedictorian, I cried like a baby in the audience. He'd earned a partial scholarship to Arizona State University for marketing, but I covered the rest of his tuition and living expenses. I ate ramen noodles for dinner most nights during those 4 years. But watching Marcus walk across that graduation stage made every sacrifice worth it. He hugged me afterward and whispered, "I'm going to take care of you when you're old, Dad. You've done enough." I believed him completely. Marcus had grown into an incredible young man. He was kind, thoughtful, and hardworking. He landed a good job at a marketing firm right after graduation, and we continued our Saturday fishing trips. He'd bring beer now instead of juice boxes, and we'd talk about his career plans, his apartment, his life as an independent adult. I was so proud of the man he'd become. For 26 years, it was just Marcus and me against the world. We were a team, best friends, father and son. I thought nothing could ever come between us. I was wrong. Everything changed when Marcus met Amanda. He'd been working at the marketing firm for about 2 years when he started mentioning this woman he'd been seeing. At first, it was casual mentions. Amanda thinks this, or Amanda says that. I was happy for him. At 28, Marcus deserved to find love. After 6 months of dating, Marcus finally brought Amanda to meet me. I'll never forget that afternoon. I had spent hours cleaning the house and preparing a nice dinner. I wanted to make a good first impression on the woman who had captured my son's heart. Amanda walked into my modest 3-bedroom home in her designer clothes, and immediately I could tell she was from a different world. She was 26, beautiful, and clearly came from money. Her handbag probably cost more than I spent on groceries in 3 months. She worked at some high-end advertising agency in Scottsdale, and everything about her screamed wealth and sophistication. During dinner, Amanda barely touched the pot roast I had spent all day preparing. She kept checking her phone and making comments about how quaint my house was. When I showed her the photo wall of Marcus's childhood achievements, she glanced at it for maybe 10 seconds before asking if we could move to the living room because the dining room felt stuffy. But what really bothered me wasn't Amanda's obvious discomfort with my middle-class lifestyle. It was how Marcus started changing around her. My son, who had always been proud of our humble beginnings, suddenly seemed embarrassed by our simple life. He kept apologizing for things that never needed apologies before. The worn furniture, the small television, the fact that I still drove the same pickup truck I'd bought when he was in high school. Over the following months, Marcus began canceling our Saturday fishing trips. "Amanda and I have plans," he'd say, or "We're going to this new spa in Paradise Valley." He started dressing differently, trading his comfortable jeans and flannel shirts for expensive clothes that Amanda helped him pick out. His apartment transformed from a practical bachelor pad into something that looked like it belonged in a magazine. The most painful change was in our conversations. Marcus stopped sharing his thoughts and feelings with me the way he used to. Our phone calls became shorter, more superficial. When I'd ask about work or how he was doing, he'd give me generic answers and then quickly change the subject to something Amanda was interested in. 6 months after I first met Amanda, she convinced Marcus to move in with her to a luxury apartment complex in Old Town Scottsdale. The rent was more than my entire monthly income, but somehow Marcus was managing it. When I visited them there, Amanda made it clear that my presence was an inconvenience. She'd make subtle comments about how busy they were or how they had dinner reservations soon, basically pushing me to leave as quickly as possible. I tried to be understanding. I knew that when young men fall in love, their priorities shift. I remembered being young and infatuated myself, but deep down I was terrified that I was losing my son to a woman who seemed to think he needed to be completely remade to be worthy of her love. The wedding planning began about a year after Marcus and Amanda moved in together. Marcus proposed with a ring that must have cost him 3 months' salary, and Amanda immediately started talking about her dream wedding. She had Pinterest boards full of elaborate ceremonies and reception ideas that looked like they belonged in a royal palace. From the beginning, it was clear that Amanda's vision for their wedding was far beyond Marcus's budget. She talked about venues that charged $20,000 just for the space rental. She wanted a specific photographer whose packages started at $15,000. The menu she selected from the catering company would cost over $40 per person, and she was planning to invite 150 guests. Marcus tried to gently suggest more affordable alternatives, but Amanda would get upset and accuse him of not caring enough about their special day. "This is the most important day of my life," she'd say with tears in her eyes. "Don't you want it to be perfect?" And my soft-hearted son would apologize and promise to figure out how to make her dreams come true. Meanwhile, Amanda made it clear that my input wasn't welcome in the wedding planning process. When Marcus asked if I had any preferences for the ceremony or reception, Amanda would interrupt and say, "It's really more about what the bride and groom want." When I offered to help with any aspect of the planning, she'd politely decline and then immediately call one of her expensive vendors. 3 months before the wedding, Marcus showed up at my house on a Tuesday night. I could tell something was wrong the moment I saw him. He looked exhausted, stressed, and older than his 29 years. We sat at my kitchen table, the same table where we'd done homework together for so many years, and he finally broke down. "Dad, I don't know what to do," he said, putting his head in his hands. "Amanda's parents said they can't contribute to the wedding, something about cash flow problems with her father's business, but Amanda doesn't want to change any of our plans. The total cost is going to be $85,000. I nearly choked on my coffee. $85,000 was more than I made in 2 years before taxes. Marcus continued, "I've already taken out a $25,000 loan against my 401k, and I've got another $15,000 on credit cards, but I'm still short $60,000, and the vendors want their final payments next month." The desperation in my son's voice broke my heart. He was drowning financially, but more than that, he was trapped between his love for Amanda and the impossibility of fulfilling her demands. "I've been thinking about calling off the wedding," Marcus whispered. "But Amanda says if I do that, she'll know I don't really love her." That night I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking about my son's situation. I had $63,000 in my retirement savings. It was money I'd been carefully setting aside for 30 years, planning for the day when I could no longer work. I also had about $45,000 in equity in my house. The next morning I called Marcus and told him to come over. When he arrived, I sat him down and made him an offer. "I'll cover the $60,000 you need," I said, "but I have one condition. I pay the vendors directly. No cash changes hands. I want to make sure every penny goes exactly where it's supposed to go." Marcus cried and hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. "Dad, I can't ask you to do this. It's your retirement money." "You didn't ask," I replied. "I'm offering. You're my son, and this is what fathers do." What I didn't tell Marcus was that I would have to take out a second mortgage on my house to cover the full amount. My retirement savings would handle $45,000, but I'd need to borrow the remaining $15,000 against my home equity. Over the next 2 months, I worked directly with all the vendors. I paid the final balance to the venue, a beautiful resort in Scottsdale with mountain views and desert landscaping. I covered the catering bill for 150 guests, including the premium menu Amanda had selected. I paid the band, a 5-piece group that specialized in wedding receptions. I handled the photographer's final payment, the florist's bill, and even the cost of Amanda's bridal bouquet. Every contract was in my name. Every payment came from my accounts. Amanda knew I was funding the wedding, and while she never thanked me directly, I thought she at least appreciated what I was doing for her and Marcus. I was wrong about that, too. The morning of the wedding, I woke up at 5:30, excited and nervous about the day ahead. I'd pressed my best suit the night before, a navy blue outfit I'd bought specifically for Marcus's wedding. It wasn't expensive, but it was clean and dignified, and I thought I looked presentable. I arrived at the resort early to check on the last-minute details. As the person who had paid for everything, I felt responsible for making sure the day went smoothly. The wedding planner, a woman named Patricia, greeted me warmly and walked me through the timeline. The ceremony would begin at 3 o'clock in the desert garden, followed by cocktail hour on the terrace, and then dinner and dancing in the main ballroom. Everything looked perfect. The flowers were gorgeous, the tables were set with elegant linens and centerpieces, and the band was already setting up their equipment. I felt a surge of pride knowing that my sacrifices had helped create this beautiful day for Marcus and Amanda. Guests began arriving around 2:30, and I positioned myself near the entrance to greet people. Most of Marcus's friends knew me and were happy to see me, but Amanda's family treated me with polite indifference. Her parents, Dr. and Mrs. Hartwell, acknowledged me with brief nods, but quickly moved on to talk with other guests they considered more important. I had specifically been told that I would sit in the front row during the ceremony, right behind where Marcus would be standing. It was the traditional place for the father of the groom, and I was looking forward to having the best view of my son's big moment. When the ceremony began, Marcus looked handsome and nervous standing at the altar. The officiant was speaking about love and commitment when Amanda made her entrance. She looked stunning in her wedding dress, which I knew had cost $8,000 because I had seen the receipt. The photographer I had hired was capturing every moment beautifully. But then something unexpected happened. About 10 minutes into the ceremony, right after the exchange of rings, Amanda suddenly stopped responding to the officiant's prompts. She turned and looked directly at me sitting in the front row. Her expression was cold and determined. "I'm sorry," Amanda announced loudly, her voice carrying across the entire garden, "but I need to address something before we continue." The 150 guests fell completely silent. Even the birds seemed to stop chirping. I felt every eye in the crowd turn toward me, and my stomach began to drop. "Seth," Amanda said, looking straight at me, "I appreciate what you think you've done, but this is my day." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was addressing me directly in the middle of her own wedding ceremony in front of everyone. "Your presence here is making me uncomfortable and disrupting the energy of our sacred moment," she continued. "This wedding is about class and elegance, and I think it would be best for everyone if you left now." The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. 150 people were staring at me, waiting to see how I would respond to being publicly humiliated and banished from my own son's wedding. But the worst part wasn't Amanda's cruelty. The worst part was looking at Marcus, my son, the boy I had raised and loved and sacrificed everything for, and seeing him stand there in complete silence. He wouldn't meet my eyes. He stared at the ground, his face red with embarrassment, but he didn't say a single word to defend me. After 30 seconds that felt like 30 hours, Marcus finally spoke, but his words cut deeper than Amanda's public humiliation. "Maybe," he said quietly, still not looking at me. "Maybe it's better this way, Dad." In that moment, something inside me broke that I knew would never fully heal. I stood up slowly, feeling the weight of every stare, every whispered comment, every pitying look from the guests. I walked down the aisle I had paid for, past the flowers I had bought through the venue I had reserved, and out to the parking lot where my old pickup truck was parked among the BMWs and Mercedes. I sat in my truck for several minutes, shaking with humiliation and heartbreak. But as the initial shock wore off, it was replaced by something else. Anger. Not just at Amanda, but at Marcus for allowing this to happen. And then slowly I began to remember something important. Every vendor at this wedding had a contract with my name on it. Every final payment was due today, and I was the only person authorized to make those payments. Without me, this beautiful wedding Amanda was so proud of would cease to exist. I started my truck and drove home, but I wasn't running away anymore. I was going to make a phone call. When I got home, I sat in my garage for a long time looking at the fishing poles and tackle boxes that Marcus and I had used for so many years. I thought about all the Saturdays we'd spent on the lake, all the conversations we'd had, all the dreams we'd shared about his future. I had given him everything I had to give, and in return, he had allowed his wife to humiliate me in front of everyone who mattered to us. But then I realized something that Amanda and Marcus had both forgotten. I wasn't just a guest at this wedding. I was the customer. Every vendor working that event was working for me, not for them. Every service being provided was being provided because I had signed contracts and made payments. And every final balance that was due today was due from me. I walked into my house and went to the folder where I kept all the wedding contracts and vendor information. Then I began making phone calls. My first call was to the venue manager, a woman named Jennifer, who had been very professional throughout the planning process. "Jennifer, this is Seth Morrison," I said when she answered. "I need to cancel all remaining payments and services for the Morrison-Hartwell wedding effective immediately." There was a long pause. "Mr. Morrison, I'm sorry, but I'm not sure I understand. The ceremony is happening right now, and the reception is supposed to start in 2 hours." "That's correct," I replied calmly. "And I'm the person who has been paying for all of it. There's been a change of circumstances, and I'm withdrawing my financial support. Please shut down all services that haven't been fully paid for." "Sir, we have $42,000 in final balances due from you today. If those aren't paid, we'll have to terminate the catering bar service and use of the reception hall." "Then I suggest you terminate them immediately," I said. "You'll be receiving no further payments from me." I hung up and immediately dialed the catering manager. "This is Seth Morrison. I'm calling to cancel the dinner service for the Morrison-Hartwell reception. There will be no final payment, and I need you to stop food preparation and pack up your equipment." The catering manager was shocked. "Mr. Morrison, we have meals prepared for 150 people. The cocktail hour is supposed to start in 90 minutes. "Not anymore," I said. "Please remove everything you've brought to the venue and send me a final invoice for services already rendered." My third call was to the band leader, a man named Frank, who had seemed excited about performing at what he called a classy event. "Frank, this is Seth Morrison. I need you to pack up your equipment and leave the venue immediately. There will be no performance tonight and no final payment." "But Mr. Morrison, we're supposed to play for 5 hours. People are expecting music and dancing." "People expected a lot of things that aren't going to happen tonight," I replied. "Please leave as quickly as possible." I continued down my list. I called the photographer and told him to stop taking pictures and leave. I called the florist and told her to collect any decorations that hadn't been fully paid for. I even called the wedding planner and informed her that her services were no longer needed. Each person I spoke with was confused, shocked and concerned about the couple and their guests. But each person also understood that I was the paying customer, and without my money they had no choice but to comply with my instructions. The most satisfying call was my last one to Amanda's wedding dress boutique. They were supposed to deliver a special accessory for her dress during the reception, something she had ordered for the dancing portion of the evening. "This is Seth Morrison," I told them. "Please cancel the delivery for Amanda Hartwell. There will be no reception tonight." Within an hour, I had systematically dismantled the entire wedding reception. The venue that had looked like a fairy tale when I left would soon be empty and dark. The dinner that was supposed to feed 150 guests would never be served. The music that was supposed to play until midnight would never happen. I sat back in my recliner and felt something I hadn't experienced in months: peace. While I was making my calls from home, chaos was erupting at the wedding venue. Patricia, the wedding planner, was the first person to receive the devastating news. She had been coordinating the transition from ceremony to cocktail hour when her phone rang. "Patricia, this is Jennifer from venue management. We have a serious problem. The father of the groom just canceled all payments and services. We need to shut everything down immediately." Patricia's face went white. She looked across the terrace where guests were beginning to gather for cocktail hour, then at Amanda and Marcus, who were taking post-ceremony photos in the garden. "What do you mean, shut everything down?" Patricia whispered into her phone. "I mean, we're not getting paid, so we're not providing services. The catering team is already packing up the kitchen. The bar is being closed. The reception hall is being cleared." Patricia had been planning weddings for 15 years, but she had never encountered anything like this. She watched in horror as the catering staff began wheeling covered food containers out of the kitchen. The bartender was already packing bottles back into boxes. The band members were disconnecting their sound equipment. She had to tell Amanda and Marcus what was happening, but she had no idea how to explain that the father of the groom had just destroyed their entire wedding reception. Amanda was posing for photos near the fountain when Patricia approached her. "Amanda, I need to speak with you privately for a moment." "Can it wait?" Amanda snapped. "We're getting our formal portraits done." "I'm afraid it can't wait," Patricia said gently. "There's been a development with the reception." Amanda's face immediately showed concern. "What kind of development?" Patricia took a deep breath. "Your father-in-law has canceled all the remaining payments and services. The vendors are packing up and leaving." Amanda stared at her for several seconds, not comprehending what she was hearing. "What do you mean, canceled? The venue, the catering, the band, everything for the reception has been canceled. The vendors say they're not being paid, so they're terminating their services." The color drained from Amanda's face. She looked around frantically and saw that Patricia was telling the truth. The catering staff was wheeling equipment toward the service exits. The band had stopped setting up and was packing instruments into cases. "This can't be happening," Amanda said, her voice rising to near hysteria. "This is my wedding day." Marcus appeared at her side, having heard the commotion. "What's going on?" "Your father canceled our reception," Amanda screamed, no longer caring who heard her. "He's destroying our wedding." Marcus immediately pulled out his phone and called my number. It went straight to voicemail because I had blocked his calls. He tried calling again with the same result. "He's not answering," Marcus told Amanda, panic creeping into his voice. By now, several guests had overheard the conversation and were gathering around Amanda and Marcus. Word spread quickly through the crowd that something was wrong with the reception arrangements. Amanda's parents, Dr. and Mrs. Hartwell, rushed over when they heard their daughters crying. "What's happening here?" Dr. Hartwell demanded. "Seth canceled everything," Amanda sobbed. "Our whole reception is ruined." Dr. Hartwell's face turned red with anger. "That man has lost his mind. This is completely unacceptable." But Mrs. Hartwell, who had been watching the vendors pack up their equipment, had a different reaction. "Amanda," she said quietly, "exactly how much of this wedding was that man paying for?" Amanda stopped crying long enough to answer. "I don't know. Marcus said his father was helping with some of the costs." "Some of the costs," Mrs. Hartwell repeated. "Look around you, Amanda. Every vendor in this place is leaving because they're not getting paid. That doesn't happen when someone is just helping with some costs." The reality of the situation was beginning to dawn on everyone present. Seth hadn't just contributed to the wedding, he had funded the entire event, and now that he was gone, everything was falling apart. Marcus tried calling several vendors directly, but they all told him the same thing: their contracts were with Seth Morrison, and without payment from Seth Morrison, they could not provide services. "Can't we just pay them ourselves?" Marcus asked desperately. "With what money?" Amanda's father replied bluntly. "You told us you didn't have the funds for this wedding. That's why we couldn't contribute." By 4:30 in the afternoon, the venue was nearly empty of vendors. The beautiful reception hall stood decorated but vacant, with no food, no music, and no bar service. The 150 guests were standing around confused, many of them beginning to leave since there was clearly not going to be a reception. Amanda sat on a stone bench in her $8,000 wedding dress, crying uncontrollably. Her perfect day had become a complete disaster, and it was entirely due to her own actions. She had humiliated Seth in front of everyone, never considering that he held the power to destroy everything she cared about. Marcus stood nearby holding his phone and staring at it helplessly. He had tried calling me 17 times, but every call went straight to voicemail. He was beginning to understand the magnitude of what he had lost when he chose to side with Amanda instead of defending his father. In the weeks following the wedding disaster, my life began to change in ways I never expected. The first few days were difficult. I grieved not just for my relationship with Marcus, but for the naive belief that unconditional love and sacrifice would always be appreciated and reciprocated. Marcus continued trying to contact me for 2 weeks. He left voicemails that progressed from angry to desperate to heartbroken. In his final message, he sobbed as he apologized and begged me to call him back. "Dad, please," he said. "I know I messed up. I know I should have defended you. Please, give me a chance to make this right." I listened to every voicemail, but I didn't respond. I needed time to process what had happened and decide what kind of relationship, if any, I wanted to have with my son moving forward. Amanda and Marcus's marriage lasted exactly 3 months. Without the foundation of mutual respect and shared values, their relationship crumbled quickly under the pressure of what had happened at their wedding. Amanda blamed Marcus for not controlling his father. Marcus blamed Amanda for creating the situation in the first place. They separated in November and were divorced by February. During those months of solitude, I rediscovered parts of myself that I had neglected during 30 years of single fatherhood. I joined a support group for single fathers at my church where I met other men who had faced similar challenges in raising children alone. I learned that my experience of being unappreciated by an adult child was not unique. I also began dating for the first time in decades. Through a friend at work, I met Dorothy, a 52-year-old widow whose husband had died from cancer 5 years earlier. Dorothy understood loss and resilience in ways that complemented my own experiences. She was kind, independent, and had no interest in trying to change me or my lifestyle. Most importantly, I began to understand that my worth as a person wasn't dependent on Marcus's approval or gratitude. I had been a good father. I had made sacrifices out of love not to create debt that my son would owe me forever. My value as a human being existed independent of how my son chose to treat me. 6 months after the wedding, Marcus wrote me a letter. It was 5 pages long, handwritten, and completely honest about his mistakes. He acknowledged that he had allowed Amanda to change him into someone he didn't recognize. He admitted that he had been embarrassed by his humble upbringing and had wanted to project an image of sophistication that wasn't authentic to who he really was. Most importantly, he took full responsibility for not defending me when Amanda humiliated me. "I was a coward," he wrote. "You deserved better from me, especially after everything you sacrificed to raise me. I don't know if you can ever forgive me, but I needed you to know that I understand how badly I failed you." I read that letter many times over several weeks. While I appreciated Marcus's honesty and genuine remorse, I wasn't ready to rebuild our relationship. Trust once broken takes time to repair. But something in that letter helped me understand an important truth about parenting. I had raised Marcus to be independent and to make his own choices even when those choices disappointed me. He had made a terrible decision on his wedding day, but it was his decision to make. My job as his father had been to teach him right from wrong, not to control his choices forever. The hardest lesson I learned was about unconditional love versus unconditional acceptance of poor treatment. I would always love Marcus as my son, but I didn't have to accept disrespectful behavior from him or anyone else. Setting boundaries wasn't cruel. It was necessary for my own well-being and self-respect. A year after the wedding incident, Marcus called me on my birthday. We had a brief, polite conversation where he wished me well, and I thanked him. It wasn't the close relationship we once had, but it was civil and respectful. Maybe that's enough for now. Maybe time will heal more than either of us expects. Or maybe some relationships change permanently, and that's okay too. I've learned that sometimes the people who love you most will hurt you the deepest, not because they're evil, but because they're human and flawed. Family relationships aren't immune to the need for mutual respect and consideration. Love without respect isn't really love at all. It's just familiarity and obligation. Today, I'm happier than I've been in years. Dorothy and I are planning to travel together when I fully retire next year. I've reconnected with friends I had neglected while focusing entirely on Marcus's needs. I volunteer at the VA hospital, helping other veterans navigate their benefits and telling my story to men who are struggling with difficult family relationships. I paid for a wedding, but what I really bought was my freedom. Sometimes the most expensive lesson is also the most valuable one, and sometimes the person you need to save isn't your child, it's yourself. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to choose between keeping the peace and standing up for your dignity? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about family relationships and finding the strength to set boundaries. And don't forget to share this with someone who might need to hear that their worth isn't determined by how others treat them. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it helps you remember that self-respect isn't selfish, it's necessary. Take care of yourselves out there.